Smoke filled the air inside the diplomatic hall of New Terra Colony. 3 small creatures, no bigger than house cats but covered in shimmering scales, shrieked at the top of their lungs. Their tiny mouths shot streams of orange fire that burned the expensive furniture and left black marks on the white walls. The sound they made could break glass, and several windows had already cracked from their cries. Commander Williams pressed his hands against his ears and shouted orders to his team. Nobody could hear him over the noise. The baby dragons flapped their little wings and climbed up the walls, leaving deep scratches in the metal. Every few seconds, one would let out another blast of fire, and the humans would duck for cover. At the far end of the room, 3 massive beings watched everything with growing anger. The adult Drakmori stood 12 feet tall, with wings that could span the entire hall when opened. Their dark red scales looked like armor, and their yellow eyes glowed with frustration. The largest one, who seemed to be the leader, spoke in a deep voice that rumbled like thunder. "Your people cannot even calm our young ones," the translator device said in a flat electronic voice. "How can we trust you with anything important? How can we believe you are ready to join the galaxy?" Dr. Peterson, the colony's head scientist, wiped sweat from his face. He had tried everything he could think of. First, he played soft music, but the babies screamed louder. Then he offered them different types of food, but they knocked it all over the floor. He even brought in some of the colony's pets, thinking the babies might like other animals. Instead, they chased the poor cats and dogs around the room until the animals had to be taken away. "Please give us more time," Dr. Peterson said to the Drakmori leader. "We are still learning about your species. We want to understand." The leader's tail hit the floor with a loud bang. "Time? We have been here for 3 days. 3 days of listening to our children cry. 3 days of watching you fail at the most basic task any intelligent species should know." Commander Williams stepped forward. He was a military man who had fought in 3 wars before coming to New Terra. He knew how to handle dangerous situations, but this was unlike anything he had faced before. "Maybe we should try a different approach. Perhaps if we separate the babies from each other, they might calm down." "You will not touch our young," the second adult Drakmori roared. Fire shot from its mouth, not the small flames of the babies, but a huge blast that melted part of the ceiling. "You have already proven you do not understand them. We will not let you hurt them." The babies heard their parents' angry voice and cried even louder. They huddled together in the corner, their little bodies shaking with fear. One of them tried to climb up the wall but fell down and hurt its wing. It let out a sad whimper that somehow sounded worse than all the screaming. Ambassador Chen, the colony's top diplomat, tried a different approach. She had studied every piece of information about Drakmori culture that humanity had managed to gather. "Honored ones, we understand that your young are precious to you. In our culture, we also value our children above all else. Perhaps you could tell us what usually helps them when they are upset." The third Drakmori, slightly smaller than the others, seemed to consider this. "On our world, when the little ones are distressed, the whole community comes together. Everyone sings the old songs, everyone shares their warmth, everyone contributes to the peace. But here," the creature gestured around the sterile room, "there is no community. There is no warmth. There is only cold metal and strange smells and beings who approach with fear instead of love." Dr. Peterson nodded quickly. "We can bring more people. We can try singing." "What songs do they like?" "It is not about the songs themselves," the leader said, sounding tired. "It is about the feeling behind them. It is about understanding what the young ones need, not just what they want. You treat them like problems to be solved instead of children to be loved." The room fell quiet except for the continued crying of the babies. Everyone could feel the weight of failure settling on their shoulders. This was supposed to be humanity's big moment, their chance to prove they belonged among the stars. Instead, they were failing at something that should have been simple. Colonel Davis, who had been watching from the back of the room, spoke up. "What happens if we cannot calm them? What happens to the alliance between our peoples?" The Drakmori leader's eyes grew darker. "If you cannot care for our young, then you cannot be trusted with the responsibilities that come with joining the galactic community. We will leave tomorrow morning, and we will tell the Council that humanity is not ready. Perhaps in 100 years, you will have learned what it means to truly care for others." The words hit everyone like a physical blow. 100 years. That meant none of them would live to see humanity join the galaxy. Their children might not even see it. All their dreams of exploring the stars, of learning from other species, of growing beyond their small world would die here in this room with 3 crying baby dragons. Ambassador Chen felt tears in her eyes. Please, honored ones, give us one more chance. Give us until tomorrow night. Let us try everything we can think of. The leader looked at his companions, then at the babies who were now exhausted from crying but still whimpering softly. You have until sunset tomorrow. If our young ones are not at peace by then, we leave, and you will wait another century before any Drakmori will speak with humans again. As the adult Drakmori left the room to rest for the night, the humans stared at the 3 baby dragons. The little creatures looked so tired and scared. They had stopped breathing fire, but their small bodies still shook with distress. Dr. Peterson knelt down and tried to approach them slowly, but they backed away from him, making soft, scared noises. What are we going to do? Commander Williams asked. We have tried everything we know. Nobody had an answer. Outside the windows, the sun was already setting on what might be humanity's last day, as part of something bigger than themselves. The baby dragons curled up together on the floor, still afraid, still alone, still crying softly in the empty room. Lucy heard the crying from 3 buildings away. She was sitting in the empty schoolhouse she had spent the last month setting up, organizing boxes of books and art supplies that might never be used. The sound drifted through the thin walls of the colony buildings, a sad wailing that made her heart ache. It reminded her of the time little Tommy Rodriguez had gotten lost during a field trip and cried for 2 hours until they found him. She put down the children's picture book she had been reading and walked to the window. The diplomatic building looked normal from the outside, but she could see people running in and out with worried faces. Dr. Peterson jogged past her window, carrying what looked like a box of electronic equipment. His shirt was torn and there were burn marks on his jacket. Poor little things, Lucy said to herself. She had heard about the baby dragons from the colony announcement system, but she had not been allowed anywhere near the diplomatic area. Her job was to prepare educational systems for human children who might be born on New Terra in the future. It was important work, but right now it felt very small compared to what was happening across the colony. Lucy had been a 3rd-grade teacher back on Earth for 5 years before she volunteered for the colony mission. After her divorce, she needed a fresh start somewhere far away from all the memories. Teaching had always been her calling, even when her ex-husband said it was a waste of her intelligence. He wanted her to become a lawyer or a doctor, something that made more money and sounded more impressive at dinner parties. But Lucy loved working with children. She loved the way their faces lit up when they finally understood a difficult math problem. She loved reading them stories and watching their eyes grow wide with wonder. She loved helping them through their fears and tears and tantrums. Most of all, she loved that moment when a scared, crying child finally felt safe enough to trust her. The crying from the diplomatic building got louder. Lucy closed her eyes and listened carefully. There were 3 different voices, she realized. 3 distinct cries that sometimes joined together and sometimes took turns. It sounded exactly like the day she had to handle 3 upset children at once, when the fire alarm had gone off during snack time. Lucy's grandmother had always said that crying was just talking in a language adults had forgotten how to understand. Babies cried when they were hungry, tired, scared, or uncomfortable. Children cried when they felt overwhelmed or ignored. Even adults cried when they could not find the words for their pain. But what do baby dragons cry about? Lucy wondered out loud. She decided to walk to the diplomatic building just to see if there was anything she could do to help. The guards at the door recognized her as a colony member and led her into the outer hallway, but they would not let her go any further. "Sorry, Miss Lucy," said Guard Martinez. "Orders are that only essential personnel can go near the situation. For your own safety." Through the thick doors, Lucy could hear voices arguing. She recognized Commander Williams' angry tone and Dr. Peterson's frustrated explanations. But underneath all the human noise, those 3 little voices kept crying. They sounded so tired, so scared. "How long have they been crying like this?" Lucy asked the guard. "Almost 4 days now," Martinez replied, shaking his head. "Poor little creatures. Nothing anyone does seems to help. The doctors tried medicine. The scientists tried different environments. The diplomats tried playing music from their home planet. Nothing works. Have they tried just sitting with them quietly?" Lucy asked. Martinez looked at her strangely. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes when children are really upset, they don't need someone to fix them or distract them. They just need someone to be there with them, to show them they're not alone. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit quietly and let them know you care." I don't think anyone has tried that, Martinez said. Everyone's been too busy trying to solve the problem. Lucy nodded. That made sense. Adults often made things more complicated than they needed to be. When her students were upset, the first thing other adults usually wanted to do was make the crying stop as quickly as possible. They would offer treats or toys or try to reason with the child. But Lucy had learned that sometimes you had to let the feelings happen before you could help the child move through them. The door opened and Dr. Peterson came out, looking exhausted. His hair was messy and there were dark circles under his eyes. He noticed Lucy standing there and managed a weak smile. "Hello, Lucy. I didn't expect to see you here." "I heard the crying," she said simply. "It sounds like they're very scared." Dr. Peterson rubbed his face with his hands. "We've tried everything we can think of. Every scientific approach, every diplomatic protocol, every piece of technology we have. Nothing works. Those little dragons just keep crying and their parents are getting more angry by the hour." "What happens if you can't calm them down?" Lucy asked, even though she was afraid to hear the answer. "We lose everything," Dr. Peterson said quietly. "The alliance, the chance to join the galactic community, our future among the stars. All because we can't figure out how to comfort 3 baby animals." Lucy felt a strange certainty settle in her chest. She had felt this same feeling before, usually right before she did something that other people thought was crazy, but that she knew was right. "Dr. Peterson," she said carefully, "what if they're not just animals? What if they're children?" He looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if the reason nothing is working is because everyone is treating them like a scientific problem instead of like scared little kids who miss their home and don't understand what's happening to them?" Dr. Peterson stared at her for a long moment. "Lucy, these are alien creatures. We don't even know how their minds work. But we know they can cry," Lucy said. "And we know their parents love them. And we know they're scared. That sounds like children to me." The door opened again and Commander Williams came out, looking even more frustrated than Dr. Peterson. "The Drakmori leader just told us we have until sunset tomorrow, and then they're leaving permanently. If anyone has any new ideas, now would be a good time to share them." Lucy took a deep breath. "I'd like to try talking to them." Both men stared at her. "Lucy," Dr. Peterson said gently, "this is incredibly dangerous. These creatures breathe fire. They could hurt you. So can a playground full of angry 8-year-olds, Lucy replied. "But you don't give up on them. You find a way to connect." Commander Williams shook his head. "Absolutely not. I can't allow a civilian to put herself in danger like that." "With respect, Commander," Lucy said, "you're about to lose the most important diplomatic opportunity in human history. What do you have to lose by letting me try?" Lucy stood outside the diplomatic building at 3 in the morning, holding a canvas bag filled with items from her classroom. The colony was quiet except for the distant hum of life support systems and the soft crying that never seemed to stop. She had spent hours thinking about her plan and she knew it was probably crazy. But crazy was better than giving up. Robert Harrison, the elderly administrator who managed civilian operations, stood beside her with a worried expression. He was the only person in authority who had agreed to help her, mostly because he remembered his own grandmother's way with upset children. "Are you sure about this, Lucy?" Robert asked for the 3rd time. "Once you go in there, I can't guarantee your safety. Those creatures are unpredictable." "Children are always unpredictable when they're scared," Lucy replied, checking her bag one more time. She had packed soft blankets, her tablet with gentle music, some picture books, and a few simple toys. Nothing fancy or high-tech, just the basic tools she used every day to help children feel better. The guard at the door looked uncomfortable. "Miss Lucy, I really don't think this is a good idea." Commander Williams gave strict orders that no one else should approach the creatures. "Commander Williams is asleep," Robert said firmly, and Dr. Peterson agreed to let Miss Lucy try her approach. Sometimes civilians see solutions that military minds miss. This was not entirely true. Dr. Peterson had agreed to consider Lucy's idea, but he had not actually given permission. Robert was bending the rules because he believed in Lucy's instincts. He had watched her work with the children during colony preparation, and he had seen how even the most difficult kids seemed to calm down around her. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. "Just be careful, ma'am. Call for help if anything goes wrong." Lucy nodded and walked through the outer doors. The hallway leading to the main diplomatic room was dark except for emergency lighting. She could hear the baby dragons more clearly now, their cries echoing off the metal walls. They sounded exhausted, like children who had been crying for so long they could barely make noise anymore. She paused outside the main door and closed her eyes, listening. 3 distinct voices, just as she had thought. One cried in short, sharp bursts like a child having a tantrum. Another made long, wailing sounds like someone who was deeply sad. The third made soft, whimpering noises, like a little one who was too tired to cry properly but too upset to stop. Lucy opened the door slowly and stepped into the room. The baby dragons were huddled together in the far corner, exactly where she had expected them to be. They looked smaller than she had imagined, about the size of large cats with beautiful scales that shimmered even in the dim light. Their wings were folded tight against their bodies, and their long tails were wrapped around each other for comfort. When they saw her, they stopped crying for a moment, watching her with big, frightened eyes. She could see intelligence there, not just animal instinct. These were definitely thinking, feeling creatures just like the children she worked with every day. "Hello, little ones," Lucy said softly, sitting down on the floor about 10 feet away from them. She made no move to approach them, just settled cross-legged like she did during story time at school. "I know you're scared. I know this place is strange and different from your home." The dragons tilted their heads, listening to her voice. One of them, the smallest one, took a tiny step forward before the others pulled it back. Lucy reached into her bag and pulled out one of the soft blankets. It was blue with little white stars on it, designed for human babies but perfect for any small creature that needed comfort. She spread it on the floor beside her but did not offer it to the dragons. Instead, she wrapped part of it around her own shoulders. "This is one of my favorite blankets," she said in the same gentle tone she used when reading bedtime stories. "It's soft and warm, and it always makes me feel better when I'm sad or scared." "Do you have favorite things at home that make you feel safe?" The dragon stopped whimpering and watched her more closely. Lucy pulled out her tablet and turned on some soft instrumental music. Nothing too loud or complicated, just gentle melodies that reminded her of lullabies. The baby dragon's ears perked up at the sound. "Music helps sometimes," Lucy explained, adjusting the volume so it was barely audible. "Not because it fixes anything, but because it fills up the quiet spaces where scary thoughts like to hide." She reached into her bag again and pulled out a picture book. It was one of her favorites, about a little rabbit who got lost in the forest but found his way home with the help of other woodland creatures. The pictures were simple and colorful, the kind that children loved to look at even if they could not read the words. Lucy opened the book and began reading aloud, not because she expected the dragons to understand English, but because the rhythm of storytelling was universal. Her voice rose and fell with the emotions of the story. Excited during the adventure parts, worried during the scary parts, and warm and happy during the ending. The baby dragons crept closer, drawn by the sound of her voice and the obvious care she put into the telling. They were still cautious, still ready to run if she made any sudden movements. But their crying had stopped completely. When she finished the first book, Lucy looked up at them and smiled. "That's one of my favorite stories. The little rabbit was scared, just like you are, but he found friends to help him feel better. Would you like to hear another one?" The smallest dragon made a soft chirping sound that almost sounded like yes. Lucy's heart leaped with joy, but she kept her expression calm and gentle. She pulled out another book, this one about a young dragon who was afraid to fly for the first time. As she read, the baby dragons moved closer and closer. By the time she reached the part where the young dragon finally spread his wings and soared through the clouds, all 3 babies were sitting just a few feet away from her, their eyes bright with interest. Lucy set the book aside and looked at them carefully. "You must miss your family," she said softly. "You must miss your home and all the familiar things there. It's okay to be sad about that. It's okay to cry when things are different and scary." One of the dragons, the one who had been making the tantrum sounds earlier, crawled forward until it was almost close enough to touch her. Lucy held very still, letting the little creature make its own choices about how close it wanted to be. The dragon reached out with one tiny claw and gently touched the edge of the blue blanket. Lucy slowly, carefully moved the blanket closer to the dragon. The little creature immediately grabbed it and pulled it around itself like a security blanket. "That's right," Lucy whispered. "Sometimes we all need something soft to hold when we're scared." The other 2 dragons watched their sibling with the blanket, and Lucy could see longing in their eyes. She reached into her bag and pulled out 2 more blankets, a yellow one and a green one. She spread them on the floor between herself and the dragons. Within minutes, all 3 baby dragons were wrapped in blankets, sitting close enough to Lucy that she could see their individual scale patterns, and the way their eyes reflected the soft light from her tablet. They were no longer crying. They were no longer breathing fire. They were just 3 small creatures who had needed someone to sit with them quietly and show them that they were not alone. Lucy smiled and reached for another book. Lucy had been sitting with the baby dragons for 2 hours when the first adult Drakmori found them. She was reading a story about a brave little mouse when she heard heavy footsteps in the hallway. The baby dragons heard it too and looked toward the door with excited chirps. But they did not move away from Lucy. Instead, they huddled closer to her, as if they trusted her to keep them safe. The door opened slowly, and the largest Drakmori parent entered the room. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. Up close, the adult dragon was even more impressive than she had imagined. Its scales were deep red like garnets, and its eyes glowed with an inner fire. But instead of the anger she had expected, Lucy saw something else in those ancient eyes. Wonder. "You are not afraid," the Drakmori said, its voice rumbling like distant thunder. The translation device made the words sound flat, but Lucy could hear the emotion underneath. "No," Lucy replied honestly, continuing to stroke the soft scales of the smallest dragon, who had fallen asleep against her arm. "They're children. Why would I be afraid of children?" The adult dragon moved closer, its massive head tilting as it studied Lucy and the 3 babies. For 4 days, every human who entered this room came with fear. They saw danger. They saw problems to be solved. They saw creatures to be controlled or managed. But you see children, Lucy nodded. Because that's what they are. I work with children every day back on Earth. These little ones are scared and homesick and overwhelmed by all the new experiences. They needed someone to sit with them and help them feel safe. The second adult Drakmori entered the room, followed by the third. All 3 parents gathered around Lucy and their babies, but their presence felt protective rather than threatening. The babies woke up at the sound of their parents' voices and made happy chirping sounds, but they stayed close to Lucy. "This is remarkable," the second parent said. "Our young ones have accepted you as family. This has never happened with an alien species before." Lucy looked up at the towering adults. "Can I ask you something? What do you do on your world when babies get upset like this?" The third parent, who seemed to be the mother figure, settled down on the floor so she could be closer to the conversation. "On our world, when the little ones are distressed, the whole community responds. Not with urgency or panic, but with patience. We gather around them. We share our warmth. We tell the old stories that connect them to their heritage. We remind them that they are loved and protected. That's exactly what children need everywhere," Lucy said with growing excitement. "Connection, comfort, and the feeling that they belong. It doesn't matter what species they are." The largest parent studied Lucy carefully. "You understand something that your leaders do not. Among our people, the measure of true intelligence is not technology or military power. It is the ability to nurture and understand the young. A species that cannot care for children cannot be trusted with greater responsibilities." Lucy felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. That's why this was so important. It wasn't just about calming them down. It was a test. Not a test, the mother corrected gently. An observation. We needed to see if humans possessed the emotional wisdom necessary to join the galactic community. Many species have advanced technology. Many can build impressive ships and weapons. But few understand that the greatest strength lies in gentleness. The smallest baby dragon crawled into Lucy's lap and curled up like a contented cat. Lucy was amazed by how warm and soft it felt. Nothing like the dangerous creature everyone had described. "What are their names?" she asked. The parents exchanged glances, and Lucy sensed she had asked something important. "Names are not given lightly among our people," the father explained. "Young ones earn their names through their first acts of courage or kindness. But we have been calling them Little Fire, Little Star, and Little Storm, based on their personalities." Lucy looked at each baby in turn. Little Fire was the one who had been throwing tantrums, now sleeping peacefully against her leg. Little Star was the sad one who had been wailing, now playing quietly with the edge of her yellow blanket. Little Storm was the whimpering one, currently the most active, exploring the picture books with careful claws. "They're beautiful," Lucy said sincerely, "and so smart. Look how Little Storm is turning the pages of the book, trying to understand the pictures. They are clever. The mother agreed with obvious pride. Little Star loves music and responds to emotional tones. Little Fire is protective of the others and has strong opinions about everything. Little Storm is curious about new things but needs time to process them. Lucy laughed softly. They sound exactly like my third-grade students. Little Fire reminds me of a boy named Danny, who always stood up for the other kids. Little Star is like my student Maria, who could tell if I was having a bad day just by listening to my voice. And Little Storm is just like Kevin, who asked a million questions about everything but needed to think about the answers for a while. The parents listened with fascination as Lucy described her students and the similarities she saw with their children. They asked questions about human child development, about how human teachers handled different personalities, about the ways humans showed love and comfort to their young. This is what we needed to see, the father said finally. Not just that you could calm our children, but that you could see them as individuals with their own needs and personalities. Many species view children as incomplete adults waiting to be fixed. You understand that they are complete beings who simply need guidance and support. Dr. Peterson burst through the door at that moment, followed by Commander Williams and several guards. They all stopped short when they saw Lucy sitting calmly on the floor, surrounded by peaceful baby dragons and their approving parents. "Lucy," Dr. Peterson gasped, "we've been looking everywhere for you. When the guard said you had gone in here alone," he trailed off as he noticed the scene before him. "The little ones are fine," Lucy said calmly. "They just needed someone to listen to them." Commander Williams stared at the baby dragons who were now playing quietly with the picture books and blankets. "They're not crying." "No," Lucy replied. "They haven't cried in hours. They were just scared and homesick. Once they felt safe, they calmed right down." The largest Drakmori parent stood to his full height and addressed the human leaders. "Your Lucy has shown us something we did not expect to find among humans. She has the gift of understanding that crosses all species barriers. Because of her, we are prepared to reconsider our evaluation of your people." Dr. Peterson looked confused. "I don't understand. What does this mean for the Alliance?" "It means," the mother Drakmori said gently, "that perhaps humans are ready for a different kind of relationship than we originally planned, one based not on power or technology, but on wisdom and compassion." Lucy looked up at the adult dragons, then at her own leaders, and realized that everything was about to change, not just for the Alliance, but for how humans understood their place in the universe. 2 weeks after the incident in the diplomatic hall, Lucy found herself in the strangest meeting of her life. She sat at a round table with representatives from 3 different worlds, trying to explain concepts that had never needed official diplomatic language before. Little Fire sat in her lap, occasionally chirping at important points as if adding his own commentary. "The primary principle," Lucy explained to the recording device, "is emotional recognition before problem solving. When any young being is distressed, the first step is to acknowledge their feelings, not to eliminate their expression of those feelings." Ambassador Chen nodded thoughtfully. She had spent the last 2 weeks learning everything she could about child psychology and emotional intelligence. "And this applies across species barriers?" "Apparently so," Lucy replied, gently stroking Little Fire's scales. "Fear, sadness, excitement, curiosity, the need for comfort and security. These seem to be universal among intelligent species, at least according to the Drakmori." The Drakmori mother, whose name was Sunrise Over Mountains, spoke from her position at the specially enlarged table. "Our observations of other galactic species confirm this. The crystalline builders of Andromeda show similar patterns with their young. The ocean singers of Kepler express distress through color changes rather than sound, but the underlying emotions are recognizable." Commander Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had been struggling with the new diplomatic direction ever since the Drakmori announced their revised terms for the Alliance. "With respect, I still don't understand how childcare techniques translate to interstellar politics." Dr. Peterson, who had become Lucy's biggest supporter after witnessing her success, leaned forward. "Think of it this way, Commander. Traditional diplomacy focuses on negotiations between established powers, but the Drakmori approach recognizes that lasting peace comes from understanding and nurturing relationships from the beginning, before conflicts have a chance to take root." It's like classroom management, Lucy added. I could spend all day breaking up fights and punishing bad behavior, or I could create an environment where children feel safe and valued so the fights don't happen in the first place. Little Star, who had been sitting quietly beside Sunrise Over Mountains, suddenly perked up and chirped at Lucy. The baby dragon had developed a habit of responding to emotional tones in conversation, and Lucy had learned to pay attention to these reactions. "What is it, Little Star?" Lucy asked gently. Sunrise Over Mountains translated the chirping sounds. She senses that the commander is worried about appearing weak to other galactic powers. She wants to assure him that emotional wisdom is viewed as the highest form of strength among most advanced species. Commander Williams blinked in surprise. "The baby dragon can tell what I'm thinking?" "Not thinking," Sunrise Over Mountains corrected. "Feeling. The young ones are naturally empathic. It is a survival trait that helps them understand the emotional climate around them. Most species lose some of this ability as they mature and focus more on logical reasoning." Lucy felt a spark of understanding. "That's why children make such good teachers sometimes. They see things adults miss because they're still connected to their emotional instincts." The meeting was interrupted when Colonel Davis entered the room with a concerned expression. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but we've received a communication from the Galactic Council. 3 other species have requested permission to send delegations to observe our unique diplomatic approach." "Other species?" Ambassador Chen sat up straighter. "Which ones?" "The Crystalline Builders, the Ocean Singers, and something called the Dream Weavers. According to the message, word has spread about humans who can calm Drakmori young, and they want to see this ability for themselves." Lucy felt a flutter of nervousness. "What does that mean?" Sunrise Over Mountains made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "It means, young teacher, that you have started something much larger than you realize. The Galactic Council has been searching for a species capable of serving as mediators between different cultures, someone who can understand and connect with others on a fundamental level." "But I'm just a teacher," Lucy protested. "I work with 8-year-olds, not alien diplomats." "The skills are the same," Dr. Peterson said with growing excitement. "Think about it, Lucy. How many times have you helped children from different backgrounds learn to get along? How many conflicts have you resolved just by helping each side understand the other's feelings?" Lucy thought about her classroom back on Earth. She had worked with children from dozens of different cultures, speaking different languages, coming from different family situations. Some were shy, some were aggressive, some were academically advanced, some struggled with learning disabilities, but somehow they had all learned to work together as a community. "The difference," she said slowly, "is that I never tried to change them. I just helped them see that they all wanted the same basic things: to feel safe, to be understood, to belong somewhere." "Exactly," Sunrise Over Mountain said. "And that is what the galaxy needs. Not another species trying to impose their values on others, but one that can help different cultures find their common ground." Commander Williams still looked skeptical. "But what about practical matters, trade agreements, territorial disputes, resource allocation? You can't solve everything with story time and blankets." Little Storm, who had been playing quietly with a picture book, suddenly scrambled over to the commander and climbed up his arm to sit on his shoulder. The baby dragon began making soft, soothing sounds directly into the commander's ear. The effect was immediate. Commander Williams' tense shoulders relaxed, and his expression softened. "Oh," he said in surprise. I can feel what it's feeling. It's not trying to manipulate me. It just wants me to feel calm and safe." "Now imagine," Lucy said gently, "how different your negotiations might be if everyone in the room felt that same sense of safety and goodwill. If instead of starting from a position of suspicion and competition, you started from a foundation of mutual understanding." Ambassador Chen was taking notes frantically. "We'll need to completely restructure our diplomatic protocols, train our negotiators in emotional intelligence, develop new ways of building trust before addressing practical concerns. The Drakmori have already begun designing a curriculum," Sunrise Over Mountain said. "Lucy will be the primary instructor. teaching both humans and other species the principles she has discovered. Lucy felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being discussed. I don't know if I'm qualified for something this important. Little Fire chirped from her lap and nuzzled against her hand. Sunrise Over Mountains translated, "He says you are the most qualified person in the galaxy because you do not seek power or glory. You simply want to help others feel better." Dr. Peterson smiled. "Sometimes the most important jobs go to people who never asked for them." As the meeting continued, Lucy found herself thinking about all the children she had taught over the years. She had always believed that her work was important, but she had never imagined it could change the course of history. Now it seemed that everything she had learned about patience, empathy, and understanding was exactly what the galaxy needed. But first, she thought, as Little Star crawled over to join Little Fire in her lap, she had 3 baby dragons to finish raising. 6 months later, Lucy stood in the center of what had once been the colony's main gymnasium, now transformed into something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The Interspecies Nurturing Center buzzed with gentle activity, as beings from 7 different worlds worked together to care for young ones from across the stars. In one corner, a human teenager named David was teaching a young crystalline builder how to stack blocks, both of them giggling as the structures grew more elaborate and unstable. Near the reading area, an ocean singer elder was sharing a story through color displays while 3 human children and 2 baby Drachmori watched in fascination. The air hummed with multiple translation devices, but increasingly, Lucy noticed that many interactions happened without words at all. Little Fire, Little Star, and Little Storm were no longer babies. They had grown to the size of large dogs and had earned their adult names through acts of kindness and courage. Fire Who Protects Others had gotten his name by helping a frightened crystalline youngling find its parent during a busy cultural exchange. Star Who Sings Peace had earned hers by using her musical abilities to calm a group of distressed ocean singer children during a thunderstorm. Storm Who Asks Questions had received his name after his curiosity, led to the discovery of a new method for helping Dreamweaver young ones adapt to bright light environments. Lucy watched them now as they served as informal ambassadors, playing with visiting children and helping nervous parents understand the center's approach. It amazed her how naturally they had taken to the role of cultural bridges. "The council vote is in," Ambassador Chen announced as she entered the center with Dr. Peterson and several other officials. "It's unanimous. Humanity has been officially designated as the galactic mediator species." A cheer went up from the human staff, but Lucy felt a familiar flutter of nervous responsibility. "What does that actually mean for us?" Dr. Peterson beamed at her. "It means that New Terra will become the official training center for interspecies diplomacy. It means that human methods of conflict resolution and emotional intelligence will be taught throughout the galaxy. And it means that you, Lucy, are now officially the Director of Galactic Emotional Education." Lucy sat down heavily on one of the small chairs designed for young beings. "I still can't believe this is real. A year ago, I was just trying to set up a classroom for human children who might never even be born." Sunrise Over Mountains approached with her characteristic grace. The adult Drachmori had become Lucy's closest collaborator and friend over the past months. "The universe has a way of placing the right people in the right places at the right times," she said gently. "Your skills were always meant for this purpose, but I'm making it up as I go along," Lucy confessed. "Half the techniques I use I learned from trial and error with my 3rd grade students." "And that is exactly why it works," said a new voice. Lucy turned to see a being she had never met before, tall and ethereal with skin that seemed to shift like flowing water. "I am Deep Current Wisdom of the Ocean Singers. I have come to express our gratitude for what you have created here." Lucy stood and offered a respectful bow, still learning the proper greetings for different species. "I'm honored to meet you. Our young ones have struggled for generations with the transition from water environments to air-based stations and ships," Deep Current Wisdom continued. "In 3 days here, they learned coping strategies that our best scientists could not develop in decades. Your approach of emotional understanding rather than technical solutions has opened new possibilities for our entire species." Fire Who Protects Others bounded over to Lucy and nuzzled against her side, now tall enough to reach her shoulder. His scales had deepened to a rich burgundy, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had found his purpose early in life. He says to tell you that the Council has approved funding for 50 more centers like this one, Sunrise Over Mountains translated, and that he wants to help design the curriculum for each species' specific needs. Lucy laughed and scratched behind Fire's ear ridges, the spot that always made him rumble with contentment. Of course he does. He's been organizing the other young ones into study groups without any prompting from us. Commander Williams, who had initially been the most skeptical about the new approach, entered the center carrying a sleeping Dreamweaver child in his arms. The little being looked like a cross between a butterfly and a cloud, with gossamer wings and skin that glowed softly in the dim light it preferred. She had another nightmare about the bright spaces, he explained to Lucy, his voice infinitely gentler than it had been 6 months ago. But the breathing exercises you taught me seem to help. She's been sleeping peacefully for an hour now. Lucy felt a surge of pride watching the transformation in the commander. He had become one of her most dedicated students, learning to apply emotional intelligence principles to military planning and security operations. His new approach had resulted in 0 conflicts during the massive influx of visitors to New Terra. The representatives from the core worlds want to discuss expanding the program to their regions, Dr. Peterson reported. They're particularly interested in how our methods might help with the territorial disputes in the Outer Rim. Territorial disputes? Lucy asked. I don't know anything about interstellar politics. You know about sharing, Sunrise Over Mountains pointed out. You know about helping different groups find common ground. You know about creating spaces where everyone feels safe and valued. Those are the skills that resolve territorial disputes. Lucy looked around the center, watching humans and aliens working together with an ease that would have seemed impossible just months before. A group of children from 4 different species was collaborating on an art project, each contributing their unique abilities to create something beautiful. Their parents, initially nervous about the mixing of cultures, now chatted comfortably while sharing different approaches to child rearing. I keep thinking about something my grandmother used to say, Lucy said thoughtfully. She told me that the secret to a happy classroom wasn't teaching children to be the same, but teaching them to appreciate their differences. And now you're teaching that to the entire galaxy, Ambassador Chen observed. Star Who Sings Peace approached the group and began humming a melody that somehow conveyed complex emotions without words. The other young beings in the center gradually joined in, each species contributing their own musical traditions to create a harmony that had never existed before. They're composing the Song of Understanding, Sunrise Over Mountains explained, her own voice filled with wonder. It's a Drakmori tradition, but they're adapting it to include all the species represented here. This will be the first truly interspecies cultural creation in galactic history. Lucy listened to the beautiful, complex melody and felt tears in her eyes. She thought about all the children she had taught over the years, how each one had brought their own gifts and challenges to her classroom. She had never expected that helping scared little ones feel better could lead to something this magnificent. Storm Who Asks. Questions bounded over to the group, his scales now a shimmering silver blue that reflected his curious nature. He chirped a question to his mother, who chuckled and translated. He wants to know if you'll teach him to read human books so he can help with the next group of visitors, Sunrise Over Mountains said. He's particularly interested in the story about the little rabbit who got lost but found his way home. Lucy smiled and knelt down to Storm's level. Of course I will. That's still one of my favorite stories, too. As the day wound down and the various species began their different rest cycles, Lucy found herself alone in the center, except for the 3 young dragons who had started it all. They curled up around her as she sat on the floor, just as they had on that first night when they were tiny and scared. Did you ever imagine it would lead to this? She asked them softly. Fire rumbled contentedly. Star hummed a gentle lullaby. Storm simply pressed closer, still the one who needed the most physical comfort when processing new ideas. Lucy thought about her old classroom, her former life, the path that had led her to this moment. She had volunteered for the colony mission to escape her problems, never dreaming she would find her greatest purpose among the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more species would arrive, each with their own needs and cultural complexities. There would be misunderstandings to resolve, fears to address, bridges to build between worlds that had never imagined they could coexist peacefully. But tonight, surrounded by the gentle sounds of sleeping children from across the galaxy, Lucy knew that she was exactly where she belonged. She was still a teacher, still helping young ones learn and grow and feel safe in an uncertain universe. The classroom had just gotten a little bigger. That was all. The stars outside the center's windows seemed to pulse with approval, as if the universe itself was grateful for this small human, who had shown that the greatest diplomatic skill was simply knowing how to care.